Hello and welcome to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends. I am your host, Leon Wolf. Today is Thursday, February the 25th of 2016, and we are delighted that you have decided to join us for our pre-debate coverage here on the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends. Let me start by introducing my regular panel of co-hosts. Neil DeWing of the Federalist is with us. Thank you, Neil, for being with us. Jeff Blehar of the Ace of Spades Decision Desk, and Bill McMorris of the Washington Free Beacon. Glad to have them along as always. And our special guest for tonight is Noah Rothman of Commentary Magazine joining us again. I believe Noah was probably our very first guest host on the show, if I recall correctly. So we're glad to have him back again after all this time. Is that not right? I thought Noah was our first. But anyway, let's go ahead and get to the show. We're going to talk almost exclusively about the debate in 2016 tonight. And of course, the question that's on everyone's mind, Noah, is whether the dynamic of this debate is going to change. You know, we've almost kind of gotten used to expecting that Cruz and Rubio are going to go at each other over the same things over and over again. They've done it for the last 5 or 6 debates in a row. Do you think that dynamic is likely to change tonight, and that either of the candidates are going to make Trump their central focus as opposed to one another?
Yeah, I would think it better change. There's been a lot of speculation about whether or not Rubio, for example, would go after Donald Trump. Ted Cruz has been directing his fire at Trump more so than he was in the past, but that's really just been a function of necessity. Cruz's polls have been dropping. He needs a very strong showing next Tuesday because the calendar moves on to places where he doesn't play especially well. So Rubio's been biding his time, in part because it's a strategic decision, but everybody's appropriately panicked now. They know that Donald Trump has, if not the momentum behind him, at least enough force so that you'll see a bandwagon effect begin to materialize. So there was some telegraphing earlier this week that Marco Rubio was going to take some real shots at Donald Trump, and then we had a quote in Politico that said, no, hold on. He's not going to be doing any attacking on Donald Trump, maybe some pushback, but certainly not initiating any sort of attacks. If that's the case, then we're looking at a race that probably ends sooner rather than later. So I would imagine that's an expectations game. They're going to start taking some real shots at the front runner. Who's the unqualified front runner at this point?
So, Neil, let me go to you next. And let me just ask you, do you agree that it's necessary for Rubio to go after Trump now? I mean, is that something that he needs to do, or can he continue to basically play the game where he waits to become the sole remaining alternative to Trump and focus his fire on Cruz?
There's a certain amount of satisfaction, I think, to be had in watching Ted Cruz be devoured by the rabid dog he tried to snuggle up with earlier in this race. But I have to say that it is time for Rubio to take it to the guy who's leading in the polls and who has been running away with this thing. It is imperative that he begins to show some of that killer instinct. And the drive. You know, I think one of Rubio's big problems is that he relaxes too much when things are kind of going his way, and things can sneak up on him. So, yes, I think that as satisfying as it would be to watch Ted Cruz just get absolutely picked apart and slowly, lose all vitality, Rubio has to start going after Trump.
Can I just jump in to say that how much I love and appreciate the fact that Neil somehow managed to turn a question about Marco Rubio into a hit on Ted Cruz. That's very classic Neil doing, and that's very much in keeping with the tradition that I expect Neil to adhere to.
I haven't been on the show in a while, and I just wanted to, bring back the old hits, guys.
Remind people where you stand. Hey, what was it you said earlier today? The great line. You might as well restate it now on BATF. What was your line about Ted Cruz's face?
Okay. I was going to be nice about this because I know that Cruz fans are going through a thing right now. It's really hard, and I've been there. Believe me, I know how this feels. Because I was a Rick Perry guy. So I said Ted Cruz's face looks like God gave up. And I wasn't going to tweet it. I wasn't going to say it, but then I sent it to Jeff in a DM because I thought it was funny.
I'm sorry.
And Jeff had to broadcast it immediately to Twitter.
I said a friend, and you didn't have to claim it publicly. I
want credit.
Wait. So Jeff, you took credit for Neil's joke?
No, not at all. I said,
what is this, Amy Schumer on the show?
I said, quote, Ted Cruz's face looks like God give up, and I said, a friend who made me laugh so hard I had to broadcast this. I didn't take personal credit for it, but I didn't want to make Neil own it, and then he publicly decided to own it because it is a great line.
I'm very vain, and I want credit for all my creative work. So I have like a whole list of Ted Cruz burns that I write in a notebook.
You have a Ted Cruz diary?
I do.
It's a really slam book. Yeah.
It's an unhealthy obsession.
At the risk of being a wet blanket here, I mean, listen. One or the other of these guys, Cruz and Rubio, is going to have to at least hope to assimilate the other person's supporters if Trump is not going to win, right? So, I mean, this kind of stuff, and I'm as prone to this sarcastic joke as anyone, if not more so. I just don't. I don't know.
It's counterproductive.
I think it is. I agree. It's counterproductive. And as much as I don't want to rain on a good joke, and I enjoy a good joke at literally anyone's expense, including my own, I think it's time for us to maybe start the process of saying, listen, between Cruz and Rubio, Super Tuesday is going to happen one way or the other. And that, I think, is going to more or less settle this debate between the two of them. And I would like to see that both Cruz and Rubio personally and their supporters would come to some sort of détente until at least that finishes, and then we have some sort of agreement to go forward from there and focus on the real enemy here, who's Donald Trump.
Well, here something
Wow,
even
that was
more
very
clear.
wet blanket of you.
It is. So
I'm
Bill,
going to set that wet blanket on fire and note that the polls are increasingly suggesting that a Cruz-Rubio détente isn't enough. That you will need to peel off Trump supporters in order to make this thing happen. We're getting to a point where you've got people who are joining on the bandwagon, not the core supporters for whom nothing he says even reaches the thought processing center, or some people who are persuadable. But you are going to have to persuade some Trump supporters to get off that bandwagon, and that's why tonight is so important, because you need to poke a hole in that bubble, and if you don't, it's just going to continue to inflate. And that's why we can be crude as all we want. Nobody really cares. But the candidates can't. They really do have to attract Trump supporters.
Or can they?
Shouldn't they do that by being
let me go to that. Let me go to that. And I think that what Noah is saying is true. You have to peel off some level of Trump support, but the main thing I think they have to do is in fact consolidate the supporters of the other person. And there are a lot of people who are in the Cruz camp who say, I'll never vote for Rubio, and there's some people in the Rubio camp who say they'll never vote for Cruz. Which of those sides do you find to be like a more convincing statement? That which of the sides, if one or the other were to drop out, would have more people go to Trump rather than the other, if you had to predict?
Cruz.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be Cruz.
Yeah, Cruz. Because Cruz is more positioned as an anti-establishment, burn it all down, burn DC candidate for reasons that don't need to be rehearsed. We're all familiar with them. It would be Ted Cruz. And that's the problem, is that, Ted Cruz's support, I think a lot of it would go to Rubio. There are people in his camp who don't want to vote for someone who they consider to be an irresponsible, unprincipled nihilist like Donald Trump. But enough of them would go to Trump that unless it was a straight one-on-one, two-man race, that's the problem. And the problem also is that if Rubio were to drop out, I don't think his supporters would go to Cruz. I think a lot of them would probably go to Kasich rather than Cruz, because the people who like Rubio really hate Cruz. At the end of the day, in a one-on-one race, they would go to Cruz if they had to. But as long as there's someone out there,
I think the preponderance of either candidate would go to the other guy. I think
that's
the vast majority. There would probably be a certain percentage from each that would be spiteful, but I think most of them would end up supporting the viable candidate.
That ain't going to be enough. Very soon, that's not going to be enough.
Well, and I think that you're probably falling victim to the fallacy of assuming that the people that you encounter on the internet, on Twitter, and in the comments are representative of the actual people who exist in the real world. I mean, definitely I run into a lot of people, and I took a lot of crap today from people who are like, when I said that I would vote for Rubio, they're like, oh my gosh, I'll never vote for him. I'll vote for Trump over him. Those people exist, but I don't know that they're a sizable enough percentage of these Cruz/Rubio base to really force people into that position in the end of the day. Bill, we haven't heard from you in a while. What do you think about all this?
Not much. There's a reason you haven't heard from me in a while. I think Noah Syndergaard has looked great in camp thus far, and I have high hopes for the Mets this year. So even though we're going to have a President Hillary Clinton, I think Matt Harvey's going to throw a no-hitter, and life will be all right, and I'll take solace in that.
the sweet meter of death will save us all. So, Jeff, let me go to you here. And you tweeted after Nevada, and I happened to see this roll across my feed, and I almost blocked you, that you thought that Donald Trump was going to be the nominee. And I wrote a post just hours before, maybe an hour and a half before this show, and I looked at the numbers here. And I want to kind of push back on this and see if that was just defeatist thought on your part in the heat of the moment, or whether you still believe this. If you look at what Donald Trump is doing now as compared to Mitt Romney in 2012 and John McCain in 2008, there is a fundamental difference between what is happening with Donald Trump and those candidates. And I even included pretty pictures. In 2012, if you won a state, you got a bounce. Rick Santorum got a 12-point bounce nationally from winning Iowa. Then Romney got an 8.5% national bounce from winning New Hampshire. Then Gingrich got a 13-point bounce from winning South Carolina. Then Romney got another 8-point bounce from winning Nevada. That is not happening with Trump. If you look at his national poll numbers, there have been 2 national polls that have been taken. I know we have the skepticism about the national polls. But that's what we're all going on to assume that Trump is the front runner. There have been 2 national polls that have been taken since South Carolina, and he's still, one of them showed him with 31%, one of them showed him with 36%. Are we all freaking out a little bit too much about the theory that Donald Trump is going to coalesce and get above the 50% threshold? Or is he kind of reaching that 35% and that's really where he's going to stay? What do you think?
No, I don't think you're freaking out enough, to be perfectly honest. And I wish I could say otherwise. Please don't block me for this, and don't, remove me from the BATF panel going forward. But yeah, I said that for a reason, and I stand by it. I'm not happy about it in any way, but here's what I see. I see 2 candidates who split the vote and aren't dropping out anytime soon in Cruz and Rubio. Now, you could say that maybe one or the other of them might drop after Super Tuesday, but, that's not going to be quick enough, especially when the next big race is going to be on the 15th of March. But what I also see, and what I think people do not pay enough attention to, is Trump's strength in quote-unquote liberal or northern states that we are underestimating. Yes, in Ohio, John Kasich seems to be beating him right now. Yes, in Florida, well, right, okay, but you say it's at least somewhat close. But here's the thing: I'm currently running the Massachusetts desk for the Ace of Spade for the decision desk in on Super Tuesday. Donald Trump should get near 50% in Massachusetts. He's going to be getting. He's probably going to win New York State. Okay, he's going to win a lot of very, very large, big northern states because the GOP in those primaries are somewhat radicalized at this point. After always having been on the outs and been on the losing end in blue states, the kinds of people who would vote in Republican primaries there are kind of angry and pissed off themselves. They're not quite the sort of like moderate, squishy sorts that we would expect or we think of when we think of a general election population. So yeah, I am really scared that unless there is some sort of immediate attack that takes down Trump's numbers on his own, or some sort of coalition or consolidation in the field, he's on his way to the nomination. I mean, listen, if it was any other candidate,
sure,
but
you're
talking too much again. He didn't tell you to speak for 20 minutes.
Which is the absence of coalition or coalescing. I mean, look, not everybody in this race is Ben Carson, right? I mean, you have to assume at some point either Cruz or Rubio is going to drop out. When Kasich loses Ohio, you have to assume he is going to drop out. I mean,
can you see Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio swallowing their pride? I could see Marco Rubio maybe doing it. Ted Cruz will never swallow this.
It's customary to actually lose before you admit defeat. Okay, here's the thing. I've noticed, and this is really, really getting under my skin lately, a lot of people have decided that it's time to give in to despair, and we're about 2 weeks early for despair, I think. I realize we have polls. Okay, polls can be wrong. we have all these indications that things are going to go a certain way. We don't know until those votes are cast what will actually happen. There could be a massive weather event. There could be a sudden, I don't know, attack of common sense among the primary electorate. There could be just the usual exchange of ideas between neighbors, and people just come around, and enough people get peeled off of Trump that it's he doesn't win all these states, and it's not this blowout. And there's no reason for despair. And I've just noticed that there's a lot of people who are preemptively despairing, and what I think that does is it sets an expectation for loss. I think it's a coping mechanism and something of a security blanket for people. They don't want to feel it later, so they're going to space out the defeat now. Feel it when it happens, But don't start giving up before.
And I think it's understandable. And this is one thing that
enthusiasm, and it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy, because this is one thing that I covered in my post. Is that if this had been a previous election cycle, a candidate who had won 3 out of the first four contests would be on their way to an unquestioned victory, and that is the direct result of the fact that people get national bounces from victory historically. It's not happening this year. It absolutely is not. And if you look at this, as a matter of fact, Trump's national standing in the polls has gone down 1.5 points per the RCP average since the Iowa caucuses, which is unprecedented for a front-runner. And I think that there is a real and actual resistance to kind of the bandwagon effect that we have seen in the past with Mitt Romney and John McCain. Now those guys were more liberal than I think a lot of conservatives were like, but they're a different animal from Donald Trump. They really are. So Noah, let's go back to you. We haven't heard from you in a while.
I'm absorbing all this. Everybody is right in your own little way. Neil's correct that there is a lot of coping going on, and there's a big social desirability factor where you have everybody in October was saying Trump couldn't win, and if you said the opposite, you were mocked and disgraced and shunned out of the public discourse. If you say the opposite today, it's the precise same effect. You're blinkered, you're grasping at straws, you're wish casting. It's a little bit of both. Neil, Leon, you're correct. I read your post. It was great and it was smart, and we are seeing a lot of upward resistance nationally as far as Donald Trump. Anybody in the past, if you had won 3 out of 4 contests, you did start to see a bandwagoning effect. We're not seeing that. Not only are we not seeing that, we're seeing late deciders go against Donald Trump in substantial numbers, which is going to prolong the contest. Jeff is also correct insofar as the delegate count is all that matters. Massachusetts is probably the perfect state for Donald Trump. It's very economically depressed. We've got a lot of white liberal Republicans who are socially displaced and perhaps a little racially conscious. That's a real Donald Trump state.
No, are you trying to suggest that Boston is the secretly most racist city in the entire United States?
No, I would never suggest anything like that. Anybody who's ever been there would definitely not say something to that effect. Nobody's
Boston
ever
is so racist that different kinds of white people hate each other in Boston. That's
well, the Polish can't be tolerated, man.
I'd also like to point out that it's not Vermont, and Vermont is incredibly racist. So just interjecting there.
Well, but so we look at the calendar and we say, all right, national polls don't really matter, state polls matter, and you have some really disturbing state polls out today, like a Quinnipiac poll in Ohio that shows Donald Trump in the 40s, a Virginia poll out of Monmouth that shows Donald Trump in the 40s. These are real outfits, and they're surveying some real races. That's going to be a problem for everybody, but we're talking about proportionality. If Donald Trump does really, really well next Tuesday, he still nets about 200 of approximately 600 delegates that are out there. The real winner-take-alls are what matter. Florida and Ohio are when we start to see some real momentum one way or the other. So panic should be postponed for at least 2 weeks. Fear is appropriate. Panic is perhaps a little premature.
Fear will sharpen the wits.
Bill, what do you think the
what
chances
state
are?
of mourning should we be in? Like, when should acceptance come?
Acceptance comes at 12:37 and not a delegate before. I wouldn't give up the fight until then, and even then, I mean, I've I've been a Republican all my life. I've been a Republican writer, an outrighter for the right for the last 4 years. I've never actively opposed a Republican nominee. Out of the closet. But I used to write for non-partisan publications, so that's kind of a big thing. But I've never opposed a Republican nominee. This will be my first, and I will be extraordinarily opposed to this Republican nominee. It will be my mission to make sure he never gets anywhere near the most powerful military to ever be fielded on the planet Earth.
So let's talk about that, Bill. Let's talk about the possibility of Trump as a general election candidate. And first of all, I mean, what would your prediction be? And I understand we all kind of have the sense that once Trump is in a general election candidate against a Democrat, the media is probably going to end him. But there are people, including on the Democratic side, who say that they legitimately fear Trump as a general election candidate. How do you get the sense that he would fare against Hillary in a general election when the chips are down?
He's down by less than 3 to Hillary right now in head-to-head matchups. That's nothing to sneeze at. Now, Rubio may be ahead in a lot of those matchups, and Cruz is pretty much definitely within the margin of error. I think it's down by 1 or something like that. But those are national polls. On a state-by-state based operation, I don't think Trump could be as sustainable as basically any other candidate in the race. That being said, he is actually the perfect general election candidate in one regard. He has been completely all over the place. And he, despite calling Mexicans rapists and everything like that, as Matt Continetti pointed out in the Free Beacon, he has just vacillated and taken every position on every issue. So he's not going to get pigeonholed with a self-deportation remark like Romney did, because he said, I'm going to build the wall, I'm going to make Mexico pay for it, but he's also conceded at other points that he's totally fine with naturalizing citizens. So in that regard, he's so slick and so untouchable that he may not be a Goldwater type candidate who gets rolled over. And I have to say, although I wouldn't vote for him, I don't think he's as catastrophic a nominee. I don't think he would get crushed. I think the country's super polarized right now. And I see him losing, yes, but Hillary Clinton is just, he's got the unlikability rates that are seemingly insurmountable, but she is double digits for unlikability as well, and I think you see a decreased turnout rather than people voting, holding their noses and voting for Hillary. If you look at South Carolina, the vote is up 20% this year compared to 2012. He's actually generated turnout. He's actually generated the missing white man.
In South Carolina.
In South Carolina.
In
Ohio, in Nevada.
He won South Carolina by the lowest margin of any winner in the contest's history. No, hear me out.
All right.
I think as a general election guy, as long as he doesn't win the nomination, I think he helps us out a lot. I think he's gotten people tuned into this nomination, and I think that's why people treat him with kid gloves, because they were like, hey, this guy is turning out. It's not that they're worried that he would knock them out of the race, like he theorizes, with Perry and Jindal and everything. I think they were like, we don't want to alienate his base. And I think Rubio and Cruz and every other candidate have wisened up that, we can hit him now, we can try to knock him out of the race, and maybe we can make nice before the convention and give him a prominent speaking role there. So I feel like that's why we haven't seen the pouncing that you would normally expect, people running second and third to, cast down upon the front runner. All right. I don't think Matt Burby is going to have a sub-3 ERA this year.
I'm coming to you with the next question. But hang on, let me ask it here. And I can't decide as a side comment who is more lucky: Donald Trump, that he's likely to draw Hillary Clinton as an opponent, or Hillary Clinton, that she's likely to draw Donald Trump as an opponent. Donald Trump would be the most hated general election candidate according to Gallup in history, second only to Hillary Clinton. It would be it would be an election to watch, and I think that you would find a third-party candidate to be more viable than any time since 1992. But that's a separate question. So, Jeff, let me go to you with this. We don't talk about the national polls, the head-to-head polls between Trump and Clinton, and they show what I would consider to be a surprisingly close race between the two. Is there reason to have some healthy level of skepticism about those top-line results when you consider things like the poll today that showed that Trump is viewed unfavorably by something like 82% of Hispanics? I mean, if you look at the kind of the granular numbers, they show an electorate that looks a lot more like 2012, where Hispanics are highly motivated to vote and to vote against the Republican, than you see in 2004 when George W. Bush kind of managed something, the Hispanic electorate and went his way onto a victory.
Yeah, listen, it's quite simple. Trump is going to be annihilated in a general election. The numbers that you see as head-to-head matchups right now don't matter. No one's done any sort of oppo against him. No one has seriously delved into Trump's liabilities, his negative issues, and I'm not just talking about the stupid things that he says on the campaign trail. I'm talking about the horrible, horrible things in this past. Wait till Hillary Clinton starts going off on all the incredible things that he said about women and about minorities, about how black people are not fit to count his money because you can't trust them because they're thieves and liars and they steal from you. Wait until, it's just amazing what will be laid down on Trump. And these are the sorts of things that will be dismissed in a Republican electorate during a GOP primary because it's like, oh, it's the liberal media hitting our God. But the actual persuadable public is going to just look at the stuff and be horrified. I don't think Trump is going to lose on a Goldwater level simply because we're so polarized that nobody can lose on a Goldwater level anymore. But I don't think he's going to come close to winning anything that you would call a swing state. And he's going to lose a lot of states for us that we might have otherwise won, places like Georgia or North Carolina, or even I think you could see places like Montana going away from us too. So no, I have no hopes that the missing white voters are enough to take us over the top. To the extent that those voters even exist, they're concentrated in states that the GOP isn't going to win anyways. Yeah, you might get more votes for the Republican candidate in California. Big whoop. California isn't going to be voting Republican no matter what. So yeah, he's doomed, and I'm going to help douse him in gasoline and light the fire any way I can if he gets the nomination. And that is my promise to you.
So, Neil, we haven't heard from you in a while. We already have the kind of, not specter, but kind of hope of a Bloomberg candidacy to siphon votes away from Hillary. We also might have, if Trump is the nominee, a conservative candidate, fourth-party candidate on the other side. Tell me how, if at all, you think those kinds of candidates might play in a general election matchup between Hillary and Trump.
Not at all. Will be a non-factor. Not going to happen. Wouldn't gain any traction if they did decide to get in. I don't believe that we can count on anything like that. I don't think Bloomberg will get in. I've been wrong about this sort of stuff before, but I don't think he really has a reason to get in unless he loves his country or some stupid shit.
I think you're underestimating the size of Bloomberg's ego, if nothing else.
Well, he certainly could buy Donald Trump 2 or 3 times. That's the thing about it is you talk about a billionaire self-funding a campaign. I mean, he could just flood the zone and buy every commercial for the entire next 6 months, and there wouldn't be any space. That's the thing. I guess they have equal time rules or whatever. Donald Trump would finally get some respect for that. But yeah, I don't see any kind of late entrant. People were fantasizing about Rick Perry coming in, riding in on a white horse and saving them. He's not going to come and save you. Nobody's going to come to save you. You have to save yourselves right now. The choices before you are what they are. You've got to rally to Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz, or you have to figure out what you're going to do when Trump gets the nomination. And then you have to figure out what you're going to do if Hillary wins, or, God forbid, Trump wins. Because while Jeff thinks that he'll get destroyed in the general election, I worry he might not. He might not. And then
at that point, we just get Mad Dog Mattis to stage a coup d'etat. That's what I'm hoping for.
It's a terrible thing, and I've we've all, as people who write in the kind of conservative sphere, to people who read these things, we all have faced into the abyss of, what if Trump wins the nomination? What are we going to say to the people who read our publications? Because I think probably all five of us who are on screen here have grave concerns, if not certainty, that Trump would be a worse president than Hillary. I mean, that's a belief that I probably have. I'm gonna give Trump a chance to convince me that it's not true, but I think in the actual Oval Office he would be literally a worse president than Hillary in terms of what he would do in the Oval Office. Would anybody disagree with that? Who's on the panel today?
I disagree.
Go, Bill.
But
tell me why.
But well, it's because I'm a single issue voter, and Supreme Court picks matter a great deal to me.
Well, great. So we can have Donald Trump's sister, who would also probably be nominated by Hillary Clinton.
See, and with Hillary Clinton, there is a 0% chance that she appoints somebody who is pro-life. With Donald Trump, there is like a 0.01 chance, and I like those odds better. Like Donald Trump,
but there's also like a
Supreme Court picks through like an apprentice type system where he's just like throwing darts into a list of judges, and maybe he hits the right one. You know, whereas it's a foregone conclusion that Hillary Clinton will appoint a radical abortionist like herself who believes in abortion up until the head is crowning. Donald Trump, as much as I doubt his pro-life credentials, as much as I doubt his ability to appoint a good judge, you know, there will be 3 vacancies. Maybe he goes 1 for 3, which is about as good as Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush did with their Supreme Court appointments. So
whoever gets appointed has to be confirmed by a Senate. The Senate has to be made up of Republicans who will confirm the judge that you want confirmed. In the event that Donald Trump wins this nomination, you're going to see a down-ballot route like you've never seen, and the Democrats who will replace those Republicans on the Senate aren't going to be especially friendly.
Well, I
don't see the down-ballot.
That's not true. If Trump, and I hate to say this, if Trump actually were to win the nomination, the Republicans would win the presidency. Rather, the Republicans would retain the Senate. I don't think that Trump would win the presidency. But if he were, it's going to go the same way. It's not going to go a split. You're not going to have Trump win the presidency and the Republicans lose the Senate. So that
absolutely disagree. I don't see any scenario where Donald Trump wins the presidency, but I also can't imagine that he wins the presidency with the same electoral map that George W. Bush won it in 2004, in which case you're talking about some blue states that'll split tickets.
All right, so guys, we're out of time here. We want to let people get to go watching the debate, so let's go ahead and close.
Can I just say one thing, Leon? I've held my tongue really well throughout all the Ted Cruz stuff, all the Trump stuff. I just want to say to Bill, there's a higher likelihood that Donald Trump will just sack the entire Supreme Court and just get rid of it as a thing than put on a single justice who would do the things that you would want him to do. As far as pro-life and everything like that,
because then he'd win re-election by 80%. He sacked the entire Supreme Court.
But he would do it so he could be a dictator.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you all very much for your time. We're going to let all our watchers, our audience, go watch the debate. Thank my panel for their time. Jeff Blehar of the Ace of Spades Decision Desk, Neil Dewing of the Federalist, F. Bill McMorris of the Washington Free Beacon. Thank you guys for being with us. Thank you, Noel Rothman of Commentary Magazine, for being with us. Thank you, Aaron, for producing as always. You guys go enjoy the debate. Go everybody but Trump.
What channel is it on?
Big shout out to Only Locust, who says in the comment section, "You can all eat dicks."
Yeah. All right. I was hungry anyhow. Good night, y'all.